I am a survivor of sexual abuse. And 2 years ago, that was a phrase that terrified me. It was really scary. The thought that as a 10th grader, I'd endured daily physical, emotional, and even sexual abuse from a man that was once my teacher, that I was supposed to be able to trust. And it continued on throughout my 11th grade year when I was finally able to challenge him and start figuring out who I was in the aftermath of this abuse. And so today I would like to share with you 3 lessons that I learned since coming forward. 3 lessons that I really believe saved me and helped me turn this awful thing into something that has shaped my life in a way that's now beautiful. And I share these things with you because I believe that silence creates more victims, but education creates survivors. And you may not be an abuse victim yourself, but as has been previously mentioned tonight, we've all been through hard things. And I'm sure that any one of you could come up here and tell me something difficult that you're going through or have gone through. But I'm here to tell you that it's not your circumstances that define you, it's your choices. Because the same water that softens potatoes hardens eggs. It's not about your circumstances, it's about what you're made of. And so to illustrate my first point, I'd like to share a slightly embarrassing story with you. It was during my junior year of high school, and it was right before the Christmas dance. And I'd gotten up the courage to ask this boy to the dance. And I don't know how many of you are procrastinators, but I was pretty much the queen of procrastination in high school. And so I realized one night that if I didn't ask this boy to the dance that night, he wouldn't have the opportunity to prepare for the dance, and I wouldn't be able to take him. And so at like 9 o'clock, I was already in my pajamas. They were green John Deere pants and an unflattering t-shirt. I was like, crap, I have to ask him. But I was lazy, and I'm not gonna reframe that. I was lazy, and I just didn't wanna change into real clothes. And I was like, well, technically I'm not gonna see him, because I'm just gonna put a note on his doorstep and doorbell ditch it. So I grabbed some mismatched socks and put on my sparkly flats and ran out the door. Well, as I pulled into his not into his driveway, I parked across the street. And as I was on his doorstep, placing this note down, I was taking some pictures for Instagram and was about to ring the doorbell when I noticed a car pull onto the street. And my first thought was like, wouldn't that be funny if they pulled in here? Immediately followed by, no. There's plenty of houses on this street. Surely they won't be pulling in here. So I turned around and rang the doorbell and was getting ready to leave when I noticed this car put on the blinker and start pulling into the driveway. And immediately I froze, a complete deer in the headlights moment, and was trying to figure out what I was supposed to do because I didn't know if the boy that I had a crush on was in that car, and I knew exactly how I was dressed. And so I quickly calculated my options for exit. And I realized I could either go back the way I came, towards the car that was pulling into the driveway and certain doom, or I could jump over the fence that was next to me, land in a pile of bushes, and sprint across their lawn for my car. I chose the latter. So I land in this pile of bushes and start running, and I realized that the gold sparkly flats that I chose were not the best option for running. So they got stuck in their grass, and I face planted it, sprawling across their lawn. I didn't miss a beat though. I quickly grabbed my shoe that had fallen off and ran barefoot to my car. I hopped in and started making a U-turn when I realized just how terrible the turn radius is in my car. And so the awesome movie getaway that I was imagining in my mind turned into 3 times reversing and trying to get around and not hit the curb. And as I drove past his house, I watched his parents get out of the car and go, what the heck just happened? Like, who was that? But I tell you this story because there are times in our lives when we're all going to be lying face down, when our hands are going to be a little scraped up and our knees are going to be bloody and we're maybe missing one shoe. We look ridiculous, we feel ridiculous, and we have to decide in that moment if we're going to stay down, defeated, or if we're going to stand up, brush ourselves off, and keep on going. And, you know, sometimes when we're lying face down, we realize that there's not going to be any lasting effects, that we can just keep on going. Yeah, my pride was a little bit hurt, but today that story really doesn't bother me. But then there are times when we get knocked down and it has the potential to destroy us. And for me, one of those times when I was lying face down in the mud was December of 2012. I'd been there a long time. I was 16 years old, and I hurt because for the past year and a half, I'd endured this daily abuse. And my hands were scraped up, and I had mud on my face, and I was tired. I was tired of lying, tired of trying to carry this burden all on my own, tired of protecting this man who was 17 years older than me that had been hurting me. And I wanted to be out of the mud, but I was too tired to stand on my own. I didn't have a reason to stand up other than just not wanting to be there. So I finally found the courage to challenge my abuser and was able to get him out of my life, but I was still silent because I was terrified. He told me that if I ever came forward, I would become a scarlet letter in the eyes of anyone who knew me, that I'd never have a normal life, I could never hold a regular job, that his life would be destroyed, and that it would ruin my family, and it would be all my fault. How could I deal with that pain of destroying so many lives? I couldn't. And so I stayed down in the mud until the unspeakable happened. And I saw him begin grooming another, even younger girl. And that week, I had an internal battle with myself. I realized that I could either destroy my life by coming forward, or I could destroy hers by staying silent and allowing her to endure the same abuse that I did. And so I battled with myself for a long time. And I still remember the moment when the tables turned and I realized that I couldn't stay silent. I was driving home one day, and it was dark, it was nighttime, and I had to drive past his house to get to my own home. And one light was on. And I don't know what it was, but in that moment, something clicked in my mind, and I realized that he could be hurting someone else, and I had the power to stop her pain and still had done nothing. And so right then, I pulled my car over and I texted my ecclesiastical leader and I told him, I need to talk to you right now. And that was the moment when I finally found something worth fighting for, when I could finally stand up and push my bloody palms into the muddy earth and make myself stand. Because for me, I couldn't fight for myself. It wasn't until somebody else was introduced into the equation that I found the courage to stand up and do what I needed to do. So that's my first lesson I learned. You have to find something worth fighting for. But above all, it's got to make you want to move. It's got to stir your bones until you take action. And for me, that passion is you guys. I mean, I don't know many of you by name, but I've been in your shoes before. And I wished that somebody would have told me in the depths of my despair that your story does not end here. You can cry and you can scream, but don't give up, because one day, everything is going to be okay again. Now, it may not be for a week or a month or even a year, as long as it takes. But one day you're going to look back and you're going to say, I survived this. And I triumphed over it. So once you find your passion, you have to realize the rest is a choice. It's a daily choice that you make, whether or not you're going to let this challenge define you, or whether you're going to use it as a stepping stone. Now, I didn't realize this for a long time, but recently, a woman that I work with, or it was actually right after I came forward, a woman that I work with, she said, Jamie, I've read the reports. I know a lot more than most people do about what you've been through, and you shouldn't be functioning. You should be in your closet, in the fetal position, barely coping with the world. How do you do it? And I had to think about that for a minute, because I was like, I don't know, I just do. But I realized that it was a choice, that after I came forward, I decided that my abuser would not have the satisfaction of destroying me. And that happened one day, a week after I came forward. It had been a really hard week at school because my story was all over the news. My name wasn't yet in the media, but it was pretty high profile, and the kids that talked about it didn't know that I was the victim that those articles were talking about. And so they didn't know how much their words hurt. And sometimes the only way I could make it to school was with my yellow blanket that the Children's Justice Center gave me. I mean, I was 16 years old, but I couldn't go to school without a yellow blanket. But even then, some days I came home early. And it was on one of those days that I came home, and I was walking up my driveway, and I was defeated. And I found flowers on my doorstep. And with them was a note from a girl who told me that even though she didn't know me personally, she also had been through abuse. And she told me that if I needed anything, I could call her, and she gave me her number. And in that moment, my first thought was, who is this person, and how did she find me, and how does she know that I'm related to this? But then my second thought was, it doesn't matter, because now I have hope. Because I saw this girl that had turned into a woman that was beautiful and successful and involved in her school and got good grades, even though she'd endured this awful thing. And I realized that I too had the power to become a woman like her. That even though I'd been through hell and back, that didn't matter, because what mattered was what I chose to do from that day forward. And so that's the second lesson I learned, is that it's a choice. Now, I'm not suggesting that you stuff your emotions or not allow yourself to feel sad. If you're feeling sad, it's okay to feel sad. I mean, emotions are what makes us human. But what's not okay is to allow those emotions to control your life. And so I'm sure all of you have had days where you wake up and you're like, I just don't want to do life today. I just want to stay in bed, watch Netflix, or read a book. And I had a lot of those days, and I woke up and I was just like, yeah, today sucks. And I learned that if I stifled those emotions, it just got worse and worse until I dealt with them. So I learned to tell myself, Jamie, you have today. Today you can feel sad, you can feel angry, you can feel hurt and frustrated. Whatever it is you want to feel, you can feel it. But tomorrow you're going to put your big girl pants on and you're going to cowgirl up, because I didn't want this thing to destroy me for the rest of my life. And for a long time, I was waiting for somebody to save me, for a parent or counselor or adult to rush in and say, oh my gosh, this terrible thing is happening. We have to stop it. I wanted somebody to rush in on their white horse or a freaking pickup truck and just save me from this abuse. And then I realized, no one's going to save me. No one is going to be my hero. I have to save myself. And that was a scary thought, that I had to be my own hero. I mean, society tells us so many things that we're not. It tells us we have to look to other people to be our heroes because we're not pretty enough, we're not smart enough, or strong enough, or cool enough to be our own heroes. But I want you to know that you are. Because the only difference between a hero and a villain is in how they chose to respond to their difficulties. And that's my third point, my third lesson that I learned, that helped me realize that I could be whatever I wanted to be, that the ball was in my court, and I could change my life however I wanted, because nobody's going to save me. One of my friends, she told me right after I came forward, she said, people are going to come into your life and be amazing pillars of support. But no one's going to change your circumstances except for you. And once I realized that, it was like, oh my gosh, I can do this. Once I realized that I have the power to change anything in my life, and so do you. It just comes down to a choice. Back to heroes and villains. I mean, Superman's parents freaking shipped him to another planet. And yet he chose to come to this planet and make a change. And you can too. And so I just wanted you to know that no matter where you've been or what you've been through, your story does not end here. You have the power to change it and to use it to create something positive in your life, to help those around you in a positive way. You don't have to tell them what you've been through, but you can change your victimhood. For a long time, I was a victim into being a survivor. And you can conquer whatever it is that life throws at you. And so I'd like to challenge you, because you can walk out of here tonight and you can go, wow, that was interesting. That was a good use of 3 hours. Or you can walk out of here tonight and say, I'm going to make a change within me because I have the power to change myself. And so when you walk out of here tonight, I'd like to remind you to find something worth fighting for. Find something that makes you want to keep on pushing no matter what. And then choose that you are going to keep on pushing, that you're going to be gentle with yourself and you're going to allow yourself to feel, but ultimately you're going to get back up. Even though you may be missing one shoe and you may be a little scratched up, you're going to keep on pushing, because that is how you become your own hero. Thank you.